Hey, this is Flo and welcome back to episode 5 of the Stocks App Challenge. In the last video we implemented this line chart, and in this video we will think about using CoreData, set up our data model, and already start fetching and writing some data. So first of all, I want to have a text field in the list where the user can enter a symbol and then press a button just to add a new symbol. So for that I will, in the beginning of the list, I will add an h tag, and inside of the h tag I will add a text field with a title and some text, and give it a text field style of rounded border text field style. And then next to the text field I want to have a button. Let's just call it add, and let's think about the action later on. In the text field, this is the placeholder value, and I'll just put symbol in there. Now we also need a binding to a string where the input is actually written to, so let's create that in our content view model. So let's create a published var symbol, and let's initialize it to an empty string. And now we can bind to model.symbol in our text field here. Okay. So that's that. Next up, we will go into the stocksapp.xc data model. If you don't have this, then you need to edit and say file, new file, and then select data model. Also make sure that you have a persistence controller, and you don't need to do anything here if you followed the video series from the first part where I told you to set up the project using CoreData. Okay, so let's get into the XC data model. There's already an entity here. Let's select the entity, and then in the inspector on the right we can give it a name. So let's just call it stock entity, just like that. Add an attribute named symbol of type string, and then over here let's make sure it's not optional and there's a default string of an empty string. Okay, so I think saving just a symbol will be fine for now. Usually it's good to do a rebuild because the XC data model doesn't automatically update, and you might not instantly have your stock entity class available. So let's check that. Okay, let's create another publish variable for all of the stock entities. So private var entities, or let's call them actually stock entities, should be an array of type stock entity. And as I said, it's not available right now, so we might have to restart Xcode. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't work yet, so I will just restart Xcode and be back in a second. Okay, so Xcode now actually knows about our entity. So now what we should do is first of all create a function to load everything from CoreData, and then create a function to add a symbol to CoreData. So let's do that. Let's first of all create a function. Let's just call it load, load from CoreData, just like that. Before we can do that, we actually need the current context, and to get that we will just create a private constant. So private let context equals persistence controller dot shared dot container dot view context. Normally in SwiftUI you would pass this down using the environment, but personally I just don't like handling the environment. That's why I'm doing it like this, because if you look into the persistence controller, there is a shared instance which has a container, and inside of that container there is our context, which we're just grabbing right here. So now we can use this context to actually load all of the stock entities. What we can say is stock entities equals context dot fetch, and in here we need a fetch request, and there's actually a really easily usable one. So we could just say stock entity dot fetch request like that, and that already gives us all we need. The thing is that fetch can throw. Because of that we need to mark it with try, and then we obviously also need to encase it in a do catch block like this. catch any potential errors. For now, let's just print the error. Obviously, you need to handle the errors in a real application. Okay, so now that we have fetched all of our stock entities, let's create another function where we can add an entity. So func add stock. In here we will just say let new stock equals stock entity, and we use the context initializer, so we can just place it in the current context directly. And then we can say new stock.symbol equals symbol, just like that. Next up, we need to actually save this stock, and that's also pretty easy. Just say context.save. Once again, this can throw, so we need to mark it with try and put it in a do catch block. So do catch any error and just print the error like that. Next up, what we should do is get rid of this symbols array here, because we're now using our stock entities. So let's remove it. And now we have to iterate over, instead of iterating over our symbols here in the network call, we actually need to iterate over the stock entities. Grab a stock entity here and then say stock entity.symbol, and we need to nil coalesce it, because for some reason CoreData makes all of these attributes optional, even though we specified that it's not optional over here. So it's very weird, but that's just something that you have to deal with when using CoreData. Okay, so we've handled the load all symbols. Okay, next up we actually need to load everything from CoreData in our initializers. So let's call load from CoreData. And once that's done, we can load all symbols like this. When we add a stock, we should probably also load its data. So after this has finished, we can just say get stock data for the current symbol. And then in the end, I think it would make sense to make the symbol empty again, or the string empty again, so it can be used again in here. Now we can actually add the action to our button, which is model.addStock, like this. Now we can run and try out the app. Okay, so the app loaded, and let's try to put in a symbol here. So let's just say IBM, let's hit add, and as you can see, IBM got added and the data got loaded. Let me quit the app real quick. Okay, and reopen, and you can see the data was persisted. Okay, so that's it for the CoreData part, and we will do some minor changes in the next episode, and then we're already done with most of the details. We also still need to handle deleting data or stock entities, but that's for the next one. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.